Also, you're going to need some templates. These templates were drawn up by a gentleman named Randy Gordon Gilmore, and his website is prototrains.com, and you can download them. They're in PDF formats, just print them out, and also you can find templates at handladetrack.com. Let's see, what else? Another thing, some more things you'll need are an MRA standards gauge for N scale or whatever scale you're using. A couple of track gauges. These are also micro engineering code 55 gauges. You'll need those as well for building your turnouts. Soldering iron. This is 25 watt Weller. I got it Ace Hardware. And you'll probably want a stand of some kind to put your soldering iron in. I kind of was feeling cheap at the time and made my own good old brick and coat hanger wrapped around a broomstick, and works just fine and dandy for me, but you may want to buy it there at your hardware store, where they probably sell them there. I'm sure they do sell them there, but let's see, your solder. I use rosin core solder, and this has the lead in it. Okay, so you have to take your appropriate precautions, like washing your hands after you handle this stuff, and don't let the kids get around. Obviously you don't want your kids or your animals getting around any of this stuff, so I've never had much luck with the non-lead versions of solder. They just didn't seem to flow or just require a higher wattage soldering iron than I have always had available. So anyway, we have that. Have a little blade, razor blade of some kind. Box cutter will do too as well. Get the cheap box cutter. This is for cleaning off your track, or scoring the copper on your PC ties, and also cutting the solder. And if I say things that right now don't make sense, like cutting the solder, I'll explain later during the course of this tutorial. Another item you'll need is a test car. Okay, I have this little box car here I use for running through the turnout, make sure there's no things are going smoothly. So you may want to get something that has 6 axles, because a lot of modern power uses 6 axles, to make sure that is working smoothly. I also have on hand, I don't have a picture of it, but a little cheap transformer, essentially for looking for shorts, or any cheap model railroad transformer you have. I have an old MRC transformer I use. Just take the leads and touch either side, and it'll spark if there's a short. Kind of a cheap way of doing it. They make little meters for, I'm not sure what the technical term is, but for checking for shorts. But I don't have one. I just kind of do it the brute force method by looking for sparks when I touch the rails with the wires. Let's see, is there anything else you'll need? Oh yeah. I've got these waterproof sandpaper for smoothing the rails, if there's any solder that got under the rails, or especially when first put the frog together and put solder in, there may be some lumps of solder that protrude from the gaps. You'll need to sand them down, and I use 400, 600, and then 1500 for polishing the top of the rails. And I just use a simple little plywood block for doing it. 3/4 inch plywood, flat surface, wrap the paper around, and go over it. You'll see me do that as I build a turnout. And I mentioned to you that I use a vise for holding rail. Sometimes I use that, and sometimes I just use this little piece of plywood here, and you can see it's pretty chewed up and filed and sanded and messed up, but I'll show you how I use that. If you don't, if you feel more comfortable using something like this rather than a vise, you know, if something like this works better for you, then go for it. I'll show you how I use it. This is, yeah, turnout building on the cheap. There's so let's see, I think that is it. I think I've covered all my bases here. So next video I will show you how to set up your template, prepare your template for building your turnout. So I'll see you in a little bit.